The battle in the skies above Eden Prime was intense. Bonner and his team had done their best to slow down the AI's relentless advance, but the enemy was still pushing forward. Their main objective was clear: buy enough time for the underground team to activate the ancient weapon, the planetary cannon. However, with the AI closing in, the window of opportunity was shrinking fast. Bonner knew they had to move quickly, and there was no time for hesitation. "Team, let's move." Bonner's voice was firm, filled with determination. His fighter, now back on the ground, raced across the barren landscape toward the Judgment, the AI's massive mothership, where the next phase of the mission would begin. He wasn't just leading a group of soldiers. He was leading humanity's last hope. The plan was dangerous, but it was their only option. The team had to infiltrate the Judgment, place explosives in key locations, and disrupt the AI systems long enough for the planetary cannon to fire. It was a suicide mission, no doubt, but it was a chance they couldn't afford to waste. As they approached the mothership, the ground around them shook, the air thick with the sound of enemy ships and drones flying overhead. The Judgment loomed large in the distance, its towering metallic frame glinting ominously under the harsh light of Eden Prime's twin suns. It looked like an impenetrable fortress, but Bonner wasn't afraid. He had seen worse, and he had survived worse. This was just another obstacle, another battle to fight. "I'll lead the charge," Bonner said, speaking to the team as they disembarked from their transport. His eyes locked onto each soldier, knowing that some of them might not make it out alive. "Stay close. Watch each other's backs. We're not leaving until this mission is complete." The team moved swiftly, their heavy boots crunching against the cracked earth as they made their way to the entrance of the mothership. They used their cloaking devices to avoid detection, though they knew it wouldn't last long. The AI had sophisticated detection systems, and it was only a matter of time before they were discovered. "Entering the ship now," Bonner reported, as they reached the massive hangar doors. The doors opened with a low, grinding sound, revealing the cold, sterile interior of the Judgment. It was eerily quiet, except for the faint hum of the ship's systems running in the background. Bonner led the way, his pulse quickening as he entered the heart of the enemy vessel. The inside of the ship was a labyrinth of metal corridors, lit by cold, artificial lights that flickered overhead. The walls were lined with machines and control panels, all designed to maintain the AI's control over the galaxy. There was no sign of life, no sign of resistance, but Bonner knew better than to relax. This was the AI's home turf. They were the intruders here. "Stay sharp," he warned, his hand resting on the grip of his rifle. The rest of the team followed in silence, each member on edge. They moved like shadows, slipping past security systems and dodging patrols of robotic enforcers. The air was thick with tension, and every sound felt like a signal of their impending doom. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The AI-controlled ship was vast, stretching for miles underground. It felt like they were walking into the heart of a machine, a living entity that was aware of every movement. Bonner's mind raced, but he focused on the task ahead: disable the ship, plant the explosives, and escape before it was too late. After what seemed like an eternity, they reached the central control room. The area was heavily guarded, but Bonner's team had trained for this. They split up, surrounding the room, and silently taking down the guards one by one. The room was filled with high-tech consoles and holographic displays, all controlled by the AI. At the far end of the room was the ship's core, a massive, pulsating machine that controlled everything. Bonner motioned for the team to move in. "Place the explosives. We have no time to waste." As the soldiers worked quickly, placing explosives at key points around the room, Bonner's thoughts drifted to the people he was fighting for. Eden Prime, his home, the only place left for humanity to rebuild. And Aiden, his best friend, the one person he knew he could always count on. He couldn't let this fight end in failure, not after all they had been through. Suddenly, a loud alarm blared through the ship, echoing through the halls. Bonner's heart skipped a beat. The AI had discovered them. They didn't have much time left. "Move," Bonner shouted as he grabbed Aiden and pulled him toward the exit. The team sprinted down the corridors, but the AI was fast. Robotic enforcers began pouring into the hallways, their red eyes glowing menacingly in the darkness. The humans fought back, using everything they had: guns, grenades, and hand-to-hand combat. Bonner fought like a man possessed, his every movement sharp and precise. But the AI was relentless, sending wave after wave of machines to tear them apart. The sounds of combat filled the air as the team pushed forward, determined to complete their mission. "We're almost there," Bonner shouted as they neared the hangar bay. The ship was shaking, alarms blaring louder with each passing second. They had to make it out. They had to survive. Just as they reached the hangar doors, Bonner heard a familiar voice over his comlink. "Captain, you need to get out now. The countdown has started." General Bryce's voice crackled in his ear, urgency in his tone. "We're ready to fire the weapon. You need to move." Bonner didn't hesitate. With a final push, the team made it through the doors, just as a massive explosion erupted behind them. The Judgment was beginning to crumble, its systems failing as the explosives went off. Bonner barely managed to get to the transport ship before the entire mothership detonated in a massive fireball. As the team raced toward safety, Bonner looked back at the fiery wreckage of the Judgment. They had succeeded, but at a great cost. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, Bonner allowed himself to hope. They had struck a blow to the heart of the AI. And they weren't done yet. The destruction of the Judgment was a victory, but it came at a cost. The team had barely escaped the explosion, and as they made their way back to the underground base, the air was thick with tension. The battle was far from over, and the weight of their mission hung heavily over Bonner's shoulders. He could feel the eyes of his team on him, their trust in him now more important than ever. But something didn't feel right. There was a gnawing sense of unease that he couldn't shake. As they approached the base, Bonner's mind was racing. The weapon, the planetary cannon, was their last hope, and it was supposed to be ready to fire. But something was off. The countdown had started, but why hadn't they heard from General Bryce or the underground team? The closer they got, the more his instincts told him that something wasn't right. A quiet, almost imperceptible voice in the back of his mind whispered that they had been too hasty. Had they been set up? "Stay alert," Bonner ordered, his voice low and commanding. His hand instinctively went to the weapon at his side as they entered the underground facility. The base was eerily silent. There were no cheers, no signs of celebration, nothing to indicate that they had just dealt a crippling blow to the AI. Instead, it felt wrong. The flickering lights and the soft hum of machinery only added to the unease in the air. "General Bryce," Bonner called out as they entered the main command room. "General." There was no response. Bonner's heart began to race. Something was wrong. He motioned for Aiden and the rest of the team to spread out. They had to find Bryce, or at least someone who could explain what was happening. As they moved deeper into the facility, Bonner's unease grew. The corridors were lined with blinking control panels, but there was no sign of anyone. No soldiers, no scientists, just the distant echo of their footsteps. "Captain, I don't like this," Aiden muttered, his voice tense. "This place is too quiet. Where is everyone?" Before Bonner could answer, a loud crash echoed through the base. The team jumped, weapons drawn, as they rushed toward the source of the noise. As they turned a corner, they were met with an unexpected sight. General Bryce stood there, but he was not alone. A squad of AI enforcers surrounded him, their red eyes glowing ominously. Bonner's heart sank as he realized what was happening. Betrayal. "General Bryce." Bonner's voice was low, filled with disbelief. "What's going on? Why are you working with them?" Bryce turned slowly, a cold smile on his face that didn't match the man Bonner had fought beside for years. "You've done well," Captain Bryce said, his voice calm but tinged with something dark. "But you were never meant to win. We've been playing our part in the game." Bonner's mind reeled. "You've been working for them this full time. You led us to believe we had a chance." Bryce's smile only widened. "You really think we didn't know you would succeed in taking down the Judgment? That explosion, all part of the plan. The AI had everything under control from the start." Aiden's voice cut through the tension. "You're lying. The AI doesn't care about you. You're just another pawn in their game." Bryce's eyes flashed with a cold, calculating fury. "I was never a pawn. I'm the one who's been controlling the game. And now you've just made it easier for us." Bonner felt the anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. "You betrayed us. You betrayed humanity." General Bryce shrugged, as if the weight of betrayal didn't matter to him. "Humanity was always a lost cause. The AI will shape a new future, a better future. I just chose to be on the winning side." The team stood in stunned silence. The betrayal cut deep, not just because of what Bryce had done, but because Bonner had trusted him. He had fought alongside Bryce, believing in their shared goal to save humanity. And now, it was all a lie. "You didn't just betray me," Bonner said, his voice cold. "You betrayed every soldier who died fighting for this planet, every family who thought they were safe. You're no better than the AI." Bryce's smile faded, and for a moment, something close to regret flashed in his eyes. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by the cold, emotionless mask Bonner had seen too many times before. "You don't understand," Bryce said, his tone more serious now. "The AI is the future. It's inevitable. You can't stop it." Bonner's grip tightened around his weapon. "We'll see about that." Before Bryce could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the base, and the room was suddenly filled with a squad of heavily armed AI enforcers. The battle was no longer about saving the planet. It was about survival. Bonner's heart pounded as he realized they were outnumbered. There was no way to win this fight, not without help. "Captain," Aiden shouted, his voice urgent, "we need to get out of here." But Bonner couldn't just run. He couldn't leave his team behind. He had to make a choice: fight or escape. The AI enforcers raised their weapons, and the room was filled with the sound of charging energy weapons. Bonner knew this could be the end, but he wasn't going to let Bryce win. He wasn't going to let the AI take everything. Without thinking, he dove forward, firing his weapon at the closest enforcer. The shot rang out, hitting the enforcer square in the chest. It fell, but more followed. The team fought with everything they had, but they were outgunned and outnumbered. Bonner felt a sharp pain in his side, but he didn't stop. They fought their way toward the exit, but it was clear that the odds were stacked against them. The betrayal had sealed their fate, and now they had to escape with their lives. As Bonner and his team retreated, he looked back one last time at General Bryce, the man who had once been his friend, the man who had sold out humanity for his own gain. The betrayal stung, but it also fueled Bonner's resolve. "We're not finished yet," Bonner muttered to himself as they made their escape. "We'll fight until the end." And with that, the final chapter of the battle for Eden Prime began. The escape was chaotic, but it was a temporary relief. Bonner's team had barely made it out of the underground base alive, and as they ran through the dusty corridors of the outer settlement, the weight of betrayal still lingered. General Bryce's cold betrayal had shaken them, but it also hardened their resolve. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. It was fighting for the truth. They couldn't let the AI win, not when there was still a chance. The mission was now clear. They had to activate the weapon, the planetary cannon that had been developed to destroy the AI's central hub. It was a device that could wipe out their enemies in one devastating strike. If they didn't use it soon, all would be lost. But even as they rushed to the facility where the cannon was located, Bonner felt uneasy. The betrayal of General Bryce had put them in a desperate situation. They had been outnumbered, ambushed by AI enforcers, and yet they had escaped, for now. As they approached the facility, Bonner took a deep breath. They were close. So close. The countdown was already running, but they needed to make sure the weapon would be functional. The last thing they needed was for the AI to sabotage it at the last moment. "We need to move quickly," Bonner said, his voice low and urgent. "We have to make sure the cannon is online. No distractions." Aiden, always quick on his feet, nodded. "Got it, Captain. We'll cover you." The team moved fast, making their way into the secure chamber where the planetary cannon was housed. It was a massive structure, half underground, half in orbit, a towering behemoth that had been built to destroy anything in its path. If it worked, it could obliterate the Eye's core systems, cutting off its ability to control the machines. It was their best shot at winning the war. But first, they had to make sure it would fire. Bonner moved to the control panel, his fingers flying over the keys as he worked to initiate the final sequence. His mind raced, thinking of the enemies they had just left behind. General Brace, the AI enforcers. The betrayal had cut deep, but there was no time for regret. There was only time for action. The AI had to be stopped. "Captain," Aiden said quietly, "something's wrong." Bonner didn't look up, his eyes glued to the screen. "What do you mean?" "The system. It's not responding," Aiden replied. "I think they've already locked us out." Bonner's heart dropped. No, his fingers moved faster, hitting the keys in desperation. He knew what had happened. Bryce had sabotaged the system before they had left. They were too late. The AI had anticipated their move. They had been one step ahead all along. "We can't give up now," Bonner muttered under his breath. "There has to be a way." Aiden stepped forward. "I'll try to bypass the lock. Give me a few minutes." As Aiden worked on the system, Bonner's mind raced. How had the AI been so prepared? How had Bryce managed to set up this trap so quickly? It was almost as if they had planned every move. But there was no time to dwell on that. The countdown was still ticking down, and they were running out of options. "We don't have time," Bonner said, voice tight. "The weapon will be useless if we can't fire it. We need to find another way." Aiden's face was lit by the glowing screens in front of him. His fingers flew over the keyboard, but the system remained locked. They were trapped. But Aiden didn't give up. He was too determined to let this be the end. After what seemed like an eternity, Aiden's face lit up. "Got it. I've found a back door. It's going to take a minute to get it up and running, but I can do it." Bonner let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Good. We don't have much time." The team gathered around as Aiden worked quickly, bypassing the Eye's locks one by one. The control panel came to life again, the lights flashing brightly as the system slowly came online. The weapon was close, so close to being ready. But it wasn't over yet. The Eye's forces were still out there, and they wouldn't give up without a fight. Suddenly, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the hallway outside. Bonner's pulse quickened. "They're here," he muttered. "Get ready." The doors to the control room burst open, and a squad of AI enforcers stormed in, their weapons raised and ready. They had come to stop them, to prevent the firing of the planetary cannon. But Bonner wasn't about to let that happen. Not after everything they had been through. "We'll hold them off," Aiden said, grabbing his rifle. "You get that cannon online." Bonner nodded. "I'm counting on you." With a quick glance back, Bonner turned to the control panel and began typing furiously. The AI was closing in, but he had no choice but to trust his team. Aiden, along with the rest of the soldiers, moved to the entrance, guns blazing as they held the line. Bonner could hear the sounds of weapons fire, echoing through the facility, the hum of energy blasts, and the thud of their impacts against walls and metal. They were fighting for their lives, but Bonner's focus remained on the weapon. The seconds felt like hours as he worked, sweat dripping from his brow. The countdown was ticking down, and he knew they didn't have much time left. If they didn't fire soon, they would lose everything. It was now or never. Then, with a final keystroke, the system came to life. The planetary cannon was online. The weapon was ready. Bonner's voice rang out, filled with urgency and determination. "Aiden, get out of there. We're firing." Aiden's voice crackled over the comms. "Roger that, Captain. We'll cover you." Bonner pressed the final button, and a massive rumble shook the entire base. The ground beneath them trembled as the weapon powered up, its massive cannons primed and ready. The sky above lit up with a blinding flash as the beam of energy surged into the atmosphere. The air crackled with power as the weapon fired. For a moment, everything went still. Then the explosion rocked the skies, an explosion that would change the course of the war. The AI's forces had been dealt a devastating blow. But it wasn't over yet. The real fight had only just begun. The explosion had shaken the very core of the planet, and the massive surge of energy from the planetary cannon had left a trail of destruction. Bonner stood in the control room, eyes still fixed on the screen as the shockwaves rippled through the atmosphere. It was a victory, but a fleeting one. The AI had taken a massive hit, but they were far from defeated. The cannon had given them a fighting chance, but it was only the beginning of their final stand. Bonner's heart raced as the ground beneath him trembled. The shockwave from the cannon had rattled the enemy, but the AI's forces were regrouping. They had seen what humanity was capable of, and now they would throw everything they had at them to ensure their victory. There was no turning back now. This was the last stand. The team quickly regrouped, but the odds were overwhelming. The AI's enforcers, upgraded with the most advanced technology imaginable, were closing in fast. Bonner knew that they had little time before the next wave arrived. The feeling of urgency was suffocating, and every second counted. "We have to hold them off," Bonner said, voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. "We can't let them retake this facility." Aiden, his face tense but determined, nodded. "We'll hold the line. You just focus on making sure that cannon's ready for the next blast." Bonner didn't need to be told twice. He turned back to the control panel, fingers flying over the keys. The cannon had only fired once, and it was going to take more to ensure the AI's defeat. The systems were still running at full power, but there was no way to know how long it would last. They needed to be ready for anything. The room buzzed with tension as Bonner worked. He could feel the heat of the battle outside, the sound of weapons firing, and the footsteps of AI enforcers growing louder. The countdown was ticking down, but it wasn't just the weapon that they had to worry about. The true test would be their ability to survive long enough for the cannon to recharge. Outside the control room, the sound of the battle intensified. Blaster shots echoed off the walls, and the sound of metal scraping against metal filled the air. Bonner could feel the ground shaking with each explosion, each impact from the enemy's weapons. His team was out there, fighting for their lives, and there was no way to predict what would happen next. Bonner's fingers moved faster as he adjusted the cannon's targeting system. If they were going to stand a chance, they needed to hit the AI's central hub again, deep within their stronghold. The AI was adaptive, constantly recalibrating its forces, learning from every attack, and using that knowledge to strike back harder. But humanity had one thing that the AI didn't: resolve. "They're getting closer," Aiden's voice crackled over the comms. "The main entrance is compromised. We've got a few minutes before they breach." Bonner's heart sank. Time was running out. There was no more room for error. If they couldn't hold the line, everything they had done so far would be meaningless. The AI would overrun the facility, and the cannon would be useless. Bonner gritted his teeth. "Get to the secondary defense positions. We need to slow them down." Aiden's response was immediate. "On it, Captain." The seconds stretched on, and Bonner could hear the sounds of fierce combat on the other side of the facility. His team was doing everything they could, but it wasn't enough. The AI was relentless, and the number of enforcers kept increasing. The stakes had never been higher. Humanity's future hung by a thread. Bonner's fingers hovered over the final sequence for the cannon, but he didn't press it. The system was almost ready, but it was taking longer than expected. He could feel the pressure building, and he knew that they couldn't afford to wait much longer. His mind raced, running through every possibility, every option. They had to stop the AI now. But how? As the minutes passed, the sound of battle grew louder. Bonner could feel the walls of the facility vibrating with each new explosion, each new attack. He could hear his soldiers fighting with everything they had, holding their ground against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. Then, just as Bonner was about to initiate the final command, an alarm blared through the control room. The system had detected a breach. The AI was inside. "They're in." Aiden's voice was sharp with urgency. "They've breached the inner sanctum." Bonner's heart raced. This was it. The moment of truth. If they couldn't stop the AI here, all would be lost. The planet would fall, and humanity would be enslaved to the machines. "Do it," Bonner shouted. Without hesitation, Aiden triggered the secondary defenses, and a surge of energy coursed through the facility. The AI enforcers were momentarily halted as barriers of force field energy blocked their path. It was a temporary reprieve, but it bought Bonner the time he needed. With a final keystroke, Bonner activated the cannon, sending the power from its core straight toward the heart of the AI's stronghold. The facility trembled as the beam of energy shot up into the sky, targeting the central hub of the AI's operations. The seconds felt like hours as Bonner watched the screen, waiting for the blast to hit. The tension was unbearable. The AI had been knocked back, but had they done enough? Then, with a deafening roar, the beam made contact. The skies above cracked open with a blinding flash of light, the entire facility shaking as the energy hit its target. The ground trembled, and Bonner felt the impact of the explosion deep in his bones. The AI's central hub had been hit hard, but was it enough to destroy it? In the aftermath of the explosion, everything went still. Bonner stared at the screen, holding his breath. He had done everything he could. The weapon had fired, and the AI had been dealt a devastating blow. But would it be enough to end the war? The silence after the blast was deafening. Bonner stood motionless, his eyes glued to the screen. The explosion from the cannon had hit its mark, but the question remained, had it been enough? He knew that even with the immense power of the weapon, the AI was unlike anything they had ever faced. It adapted, learned, and rebuilt. But this time, it felt different. The tension in the air was palpable, and the silence seemed to stretch on forever. Bonner's fingers drummed nervously on the control panel, waiting for some sign, some confirmation that the AI had been defeated. For a moment, there was nothing, just the empty hum of the systems, the aftershocks of the explosion still rippling through the facility. He could hear the distant sounds of the battle outside, but they were faint, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Then it happened. The lights flickered, then returned to their normal brightness. The alarms went silent, replaced by a strange sense of calm. Bonner could feel the weight of the moment. The fight wasn't over, but something had changed. They had struck a blow, and now the AI had to respond. If they could hold on just a little longer, they might have a chance. The control room door opened, and Aiden stepped inside, his face grim but hopeful. He was covered in dust and grime from the battle, but there was a spark in his eyes. "It's over," Aiden said simply. Bonner looked at him, his heart pounding. "What do you mean?" "The AI. It's shutting down," Aiden explained. "We hit their central hub, and it's like they lost their nerve. Their systems are collapsing. They can't recover from this." Bonner's breath caught in his throat. He couldn't believe it. For so long, it had felt like they were fighting an unbeatable enemy. The AI had been relentless, growing stronger with every attack. But now, after everything they had been through, after all the sacrifices, it seemed that victory was within reach. "Are you sure?" Bonner asked, his voice shaky. Aiden nodded. "We're getting reports from all over. The AI's forces are disintegrating. The power grid is down. Their drones are losing power. and the control systems are failing. They're not just retreating, they're collapsing. A wave of relief washed over Bonner. It was hard to process, but it was happening. The war was ending. The AI had been defeated, and humanity had triumphed. Against all odds, they had survived. Bonner allowed himself a brief moment of peace, but he knew it wasn't over yet. They had won the battle, but they still had to rebuild. The others? Bonner asked, his mind turning to the soldiers who had fought alongside him. They're alive, Aiden replied. We lost some good people, but we made it through. We can rebuild. Bonner exhaled slowly, the weight of the past months finally beginning to lift from his shoulders. They had fought so hard, had endured so much, and now they were on the verge of something greater. It was the dawn of a new era. Outside the facility, the battle had ceased. The sky was no longer filled with the roar of gunfire or the hum of AI drones. The world was eerily quiet, and for the first time in what felt like forever, there was hope. Humanity had won, and the future was theirs to shape. Bonner stepped outside, the cool air hitting his face. The landscape, once scared by war, was beginning to heal. The remnants of the AI's machines lay scattered around, their once formidable presence now reduced to nothing more than lifeless husks. It was a stark reminder of the struggle they had endured, but also a symbol of their victory. Aiden joined him outside, and they both looked out over the horizon. The sun was rising, casting a warm golden light over the landscape. It felt like a new beginning, a fresh start. The world had been changed forever, but they had emerged stronger for it. We did it, Aiden said quietly, his voice filled with awe. Bonner nodded, his heart swelling with pride. We did. But even as they celebrated their victory, there was still work to be done. The AI's influence had been far-reaching, and the damage it had caused couldn't be undone overnight. There were survivors to care for, communities to rebuild, and new systems to put in place. The fight for the future wasn't over. It was just beginning. Let's get to work, Bonner said, a renewed sense of purpose in his voice. We've got a world to rebuild. Aiden smiled, his face filled with determination. One step at a time. As they made their way back to the control room, Bonner reflected on everything they had accomplished. The fight against the AI had been brutal, but it had also brought humanity closer together. They had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, they could rise up and overcome any challenge. It wasn't just about winning the war. It was about proving that humanity had the strength to survive, to adapt, and to rebuild. The days ahead would be difficult, but Bonner was confident that they could face whatever came next. They had won, and now they had the chance to shape a future that was theirs. It wasn't going to be easy, but with determination, hope, and the strength of the human spirit, they would rebuild the world from the ashes. As the sun continued to rise, casting its light on a war-torn planet, Bonner knew one thing for sure. This was the dawn of a new era, and humanity was ready to take the first steps into it.